Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's program. Joining me today in the studio is a longtime friend of the Armenian community who is running for Los Angeles Unified School District Board in a special election next month on March 5th. Jackie Goldberg is my guest. Please stay with us. Welcome back, everyone. My guest this evening in the studio is a longtime friend of the Armenian community. In fact, the fact that we have a little Armenia in LA, we owe it to my guest, Jackie Goldberg. Welcome back to our studio.
Ara, it's always a pleasure to see you and to be here.
So you were a member of LA City Council,
Yes.
and then you went to the State Assembly.
Well, first I was on the school board.
Yes, you were on the
Yes.
school board, and then you went to the State Assembly,
Right.
and then you retired. But
Right.
you're back running for LA School Board
Yes,
again.
yes.
Tell us about the March 5th election and why is it important?
Well, the March 5th election is a special election, and it was caused when Ref Rodriguez, who was the charter candidate in Board District 5, had to resign. He had to resign because he had charges, which he pled guilty to, of money laundering. That means he paid people back who looked like they made donations, but they really didn't. And so that led an opening. I did try to get the board to appoint me, but there were 3 board members who were elected with about $13 million, oh my goodness, of money from charter folks, and they decided they didn't want me on the board, so they said no. And so I decided to run instead, because I think it's important to bring some balance and some experience to this board.
So which areas of LA does the 5th District?
Well, it's a very interesting district because it was invented a while ago by MALDEF, the Mexican American Legal Defense and Education Fund. So it put together Northeast and Southeast into one district with a little line that kind of connects it. So Northeast, it's Eagle Rock, it's Highland Park and Mount Washington, it's Elysian Valley, it's Silver Lake and Echo Park. It's a little bit of Hollywood on the east end. It goes to a little bit of El Sereno. It goes to Mount Herman and that little area over there, Montecito Heights. And then it goes all the way around East LA, and it goes down to Cudahy and Vernon and Southgate and Huntington Park and Bell Gardens. So it's a very diverse district, and it's a district which, in my opinion, has been neglected, at least the southeast part of it. A lot of, it's far away from downtown LA, and so people just don't go there and go look at it. So one of the things I plan to do when I win this race is I'm going to have my office in southeast Los Angeles so that I start there every morning and make sure that those schools and those communities get real attention. I'll certainly have an office up here in the north end of the district too, because we don't want to neglect anyone. But at least I've had more experience with those schools, and I have a much better grasp right now of what they need.
You mentioned that the person you would be replacing is a charter candidate, and also the way you described your district, the demographic has changed, certainly in Silver Lake, in Echo Park, in those areas, due to gentrification. We've had a complete change of demographic, which is more pro-charter. How do you look to address the issues facing that community?
I think that's a very good question. I think there's 2 things you have to do about charter. You have to separate. You have to separate the decision of a parent who thinks that it's a better place for their child from the billionaire privatizers of public education. So the parent I have no problem with. You know, all of us who are parents, and I'm a grandparent of 2 kids in the schools now, a first and a third grader, all of us make decisions of what we think is best for our children. And I've never told anybody what they should do with their kids any more than I'd want anyone to do that to me. But the problem is that the system in Sacramento of the legislation is rigged. And here's what I mean. So let's say that you have an elementary school and 17 of your students over a little bit of time decide their parents to put them in a charter school. They take with them 100% of the money. Okay, do the cost to that school get reduced by 100%? No.
Yeah.
You still have the lights on. You still have water and gas for heating and cooling. If the roof leaks, you still got to pay for the roof. If the playground has holes in it, you need to repave it. So what happens is that each school that loses kids has an empty spot in their budget. And so what you see over time, and this bill is, the charters have been around for 26 years, what you see over time is that schools begin to say, well, we can't have a nurse 5 days a week, we'll only have them 4. Well, maybe we can't have them 4, maybe we'll only have them 3. And so what we need to do is we need to go to Sacramento and say to them, look, this has been around for 25 years. No one here is saying kill it. No one's trying to close down the charter schools that exist. But, you know, I think there's some reform of charter legislation. And here's some of the things I would include in it. I would include that an empty classroom is really an empty classroom. Because right now, it can be your computer lab, it can be your music room, it can be your library, it can be any room in your school that you're using for academic purposes, but that does not have a teacher in it all day, every day. Well, that's terrible. Why should a school, a charter school, or any school be co-located on your campus and cost you programs that help the kids that are already there? So we need them to look at the definition of an empty classroom. We need them to backfill the fixed costs when a child leaves, so that there's no financial harm to the district school because somebody wants a charter school. We need, I think, to put into some requirements a little bit about what kinds of rules there are for co-location. Should you be able to put a high school on a middle school campus? Right now in the southeast part of this, of Southgate, there's a middle school that has parents that are fit to be tied because their 6th graders are about to go to school with 12th graders.
Yeah.
And they don't want that. And so there has to be some rules. We need to have charter schools submit their budgets to the County Office of Education the way districts do every year. If they did that, we would have caught the Celerity woman who was stealing money from the kids and putting it into her own pocket. We would have caught the Eagle Rock Elementary School, charter school, that didn't open on opening day. And I remember seeing the picture in the Times with it holding on to the little kids, and there's really no school there anymore. Well, those things shouldn't be allowed to happen. And we can do something about that, because in Sacramento, I think there are people who are beginning to see that no, it isn't charter or no charter, it's charter that's regulated in a way that the two systems can work together instead of undermine each other. And that's what we have now. We have them fighting and undermining. We have 33% of all of the charter schools in LA Unified are under-enrolled by 20 to 65%. So we got too many of them, all right? Then if they're under-enrolled and the district schools are under-enrolled, something's wrong.
Yeah.
You have to be able to rationalize the system. Doesn't make any sense to have half-empty schools, either charter or district. So those are the kinds of things that got me into this race. I think that because I served in Sacramento, and I know so many of the folks up there still, because the people I served with in the Assembly are mostly now in the Senate, I think that I'll have an easier time working with those folks to say, okay, you don't want to kill charters. It's not my goal either, but let's rationalize the system so that everybody comes out okay, and we stop this having a decision made by a parent who has only good things in their heart for their child, ends up undermining somebody else's child. That's shouldn't be allowed.
Yeah, we'll pick up that conversation after our first break. We'll be right back. Please stay with us. Welcome back, everyone. If you're just joining me, our guest this evening is Jackie Goldberg, who's running for LA Unified School Board in the 5th District in a special election in March. We talked about some of the issues facing the education component of the city, but you're no stranger to the Armenian community. I have to tell our viewers that Little Armenia, the designation in Hollywood that we've all enjoy and live in fact the studio is in Little Armenia, is due to Ms. Goldberg and her efforts while she was in city council. Tell us a little about that.
Well, you know, a number of folks who have, particularly along Hollywood Boulevard and Sunset Boulevard in Little Armenia, said to me, you know, we've seen designations at Water Village, we've seen designations other places, can we do something here? So we did a little research, and I had Baitzar on my staff, and so she helped me with the research, and we found out that really it just takes a motion by a council member, a designated spot, and then a sign, a couple of signs actually at each end. So we put together that with a lot of folks who actually had businesses or homes nearby, and I took it to other communities, and I said to them, you know, I'm going to do this, is this going to bother you? And everybody kind of signed off on it, and then I took it to the city council, and really it was a unanimous vote. And it took us a little longer than I wanted to get the signs up. I don't know what that was about, but finally they're there, and they're there permanently. And I think it's important. I think it's important. I did one for the Thai community as well, because, you know, people don't realize how diverse this city is, and how much people of all different backgrounds have contributed to this city. So even something as little as a sign not only gives pride to the people whose community is, but it also tells the rest of the folks, look, here's a community that's participated in the life of the city, and we want to designate a neighborhood in their name.
And I'm also happy that 20 some odd years, I remember the day that the sign was unveiled.
Yeah, it took a long time.
That the community is still vibrant,
yes.
and the subsequent city council members are actually working, like Mitch O'Farrell is doing the gateway to Little Armenia, and
good.
certainly the school and the churches and
Yeah.
everything else contribute to it. So thank you again. But you also did say that you were in Armenia. Tell us a little bit
when
about
I was
that.
on the school board is when I really began to get engaged with the Armenian community. I always had a place in my heart for you because being Jewish, I see that diaspora and Holocaust are both in our histories, and it made it very easy for me to take a position that, yes, a Holocaust did occur, and it should be recognized, and people should take responsibility for it. But as a board member, I was able to get a dual language program called bilingual in those days in Armenian and English, and the first Armenian-speaking administrators to be appointed. While I was on the board from 83 to 91, we had the earthquake in Armenia. And I thought, well, you know, you don't really ask children for much. So I asked the children of the district, would they just bring change, whatever small change they had, to their school, and we collected it all over the entire district, not just in Little Armenia, but all over the district. And we came up with a sum of money that surprised me. I wish I remember what it was, but it was significant. And the ANC called me up and said, we would like you to bring it to Armenia. Well, I didn't have it think twice before I said yes. But I will say it was a very moving experience because it wasn't long after the earthquake, and there were many houses that were still devastated. There was only electricity a couple of hours a day. Azerbaijan had cut off the border, and so fuel couldn't come in, and people were literally burning their furniture to stay warm in the winter. And I was inspired by the courage and by the willingness of everybody to help each other in that situation. And I was very happy that I had an opportunity to meet with some of the school people. I went to a couple of schools while I was there, and I had dinner one night with some teachers, and it left a very strong impression in me that this was a community and a nation that was going to rebuild. And I hear now, and I've seen pictures, I know you have.
We have, and we've also emerged victorious in a couple of wars, so it's a good thing. Coming back to your desire to be back in the city council, a lot
Not city council, school board.
School board,
That's
sorry.
right.
A lot has changed since you left. What are some of the key things that you think have changed and need improvement?
Well, I was not very supportive of a superintendent being selected that had no education background. I have nothing personal against him, but I think that I'm a strong believer in education and public education, and I believe the people who commit their lives to it are the ones that should be running school districts. So I want to be a part of the evaluation process and see if this man is living up to what he said he was going to do. I'm very worried that he's going to put in something called the portfolio plan. This is a plan being pushed by people who are what we call the billionaire privatizers. These are people who don't want to pay more taxes so that kids can get a good education. So they want to say, oh, you don't need money, you just need to have more charter schools. So they spent $15 million, $13.5 million kicking out a very fine school board president, Steve Zimmer. But they also spent $40 million trying to get Marshall Tuck elected to the state superintendent of public instruction. I mean, even I can't believe that anyone would spend $40 million on a superintendent's race. But what it tells you is that there is a group in this country who are the same people, the Walmart family, the folks that do ALEC, the Koch brothers. There are people in this country who do not support public education, didn't go to school in public schools themselves, don't care that their families never had anything to do with public education. And they are funding campaigns around the country to try and get districts to close underperforming district schools rather than get them more money and get them more help. And so to do that, instead, they want them closed and put charters in. But the charters are having the same problems. There's 110 schools in LA Unified that were listed by the state as having the lowest scores. 22% of them are charter schools. So everybody's having the same problem, and it's because this state, since Proposition 13 in 1978, spends too little money on our children. Right now, we spend about $12,000 a year. New York spends $22,000. If we spent $22,000, we'd have smaller class sizes. We'd have a librarian in every library. We'd have a nurse on every campus. We'd have social workers and psychiatric social workers. We'd have more assistant principals. We'd have more people who were teaching assistants to have more adults in the classroom. California has a reputation of being a good state for everything because we're so blue. But if it takes a 2/3 vote to change the taxes, then you can't actually do anything about the real problems of the state. And underfunding public education is my first priority, to change that.
We'll talk about the strike that just recently ended after we come back. I want to hear what you have to say about that. Please stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. I'm continuing my conversation about the state of education in Los Angeles with Jackie Goldberg, who is up for election in a special election on March 5th for the LA Unified School District Board in this 5th district. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Let's talk about the strike. Your election is on the heels of this strike that had a groundswell of support, it seemed, not just from teachers and parents, but also a wider array of the community. And then it ended. What were some of the things that were achieved with the strike? And is there a benefit you going into the election with those achievements?
I think so, because I'm a person who will make sure that the things they agreed to get done. You know, it's one thing to have an agreement, it's another thing to have the agreement carried out faithfully with the intent that it was. The teachers got a lot. I think the most important is the one that will be talked about the least, and that's the removal from the contract of something called Contract Provision 1.5. And what that said is that the district will negotiate with the teachers about what the maximum class size will be, but we won't really have to do it. We can claim at any time that we don't have enough money, so we don't really have to do it. So they've never done it. So that's gone. So that means when the teachers and the district negotiate class size, that will be the maximum. Now that's really wonderful news. They also agreed to have a nurse in every elementary school 5 days a week, full-time. They also agreed that every middle and high school will have a full-time librarian opening up libraries that have been closed. You know, we complain children don't read enough, and then we close the libraries. Not a very smart process. They also included in it that the board would take a vote publicly to ask the legislature to put a temporary hold on adding new charters until they've reviewed the impact of the existing legislation and perhaps made some changes to it. And that vote passed 5 out of 6, so they kept their word on that, and that was very good. I think also, though, there are some reopeners on that I'm a little nervous about, because one of the things the district keeps wanting to do is to cut the retirement benefits of people like me. They can't do it to anybody who's already retired, but they want to do it in the future. And people say, well, I don't get a pension anywhere else. Why should teachers? Because people don't realize that over the years, the district has negotiated with unions not to take raises, but instead to take benefits on retirement. And that saved the district a ton of money, and it also kept the salaries of teachers lower than perhaps they should have been. So now they say, oh, well, we can't afford it. Well, okay, then go back and give me all the raises I didn't get that I forewent in order to get this. And I think that's something that worries me, because they keep saying they want to cut pensions for the future, they want to cut health care for the future, they want teachers to pay more into it. Well, then you're going to have to raise salaries. Because otherwise you're going to have people who can do what we teachers do, not going into teaching. Because they will say, well, gee, I can't afford it. At least I know that my future is secure if I take less money now. And I think that's really a wrong thing to do. On the whole, I think the teachers did very well. They also got an increase of a teacher per school in the year 1, and then 2, and then 2. So there will be a 5 student reduction. Class sizes are still too big, way too big, and that's why we have to go to Sacramento. We have to remind Sacramento that after you say the United States, China, Japan, and Germany, if California were a country all by ourselves, we'd be the 5th richest economy in the world. So there's no excuse at all for us spending $12,000 a year per kid. There's no excuse for that. Now, they will argue, and they will be right, that Jarvis and Gann, when they put those measures on the ballot, put in a poison pill of a 2/3 vote in each house to do the taxes. Well, they've got 2/3 now. So I'm telling you, and I'm telling your viewers, go see your state assembly member, go see your state senator. They're home every Friday. You don't need an appointment. Just go to their offices and tell them we gave you 2/3 vote, and now we expect you to use that to invest in the children of California.
It's surprising that every election cycle there are these myriad ballot measures, but none that has tried to overturn Measure 13.
I think one's coming.
Oh, okay.
I think in 2020 they're going to do what they call a split roll. They're going to say if you own your own home and you're paying, you in the bank, and you're paying your property taxes, nothing's going to change for you. But if you own commercial property, businesses or multiple units, now we're going to say no. That should be taxed differently, because that's profit-making land, profit-making businesses, and it should be taxed appropriately. The tank farms in Lomita that have all that oil stored in them, they're paying the same property taxes they did in 1978.
Oh, wow.
Anaheim, Disneyland, paying the same property taxes they did in 1978. Are the prices at Disneyland the same as they were in 1978? No, really? Okay, so time to put your money into the communities that have made you rich.
We'll be right back. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back, everyone. The Armenian National Committee of America Western Region last week endorsed Jackie Goldberg for her bid for the LA Unified School District, District 5 seat in a special election on March 5th. So if you are living in Los Angeles, please register to vote, and go and vote on March 5th. Jackie Goldberg, we're back with you.
And I was very proud to have that endorsement.
It's, of course, I mean, the community actually would not be here because you were one of the people who kind of saw us through it in the early days.
Yeah.
And we have definitely progressed.
Yes, oh my goodness, oh my goodness.
It's a long discussion. We could spend
Yes.
hours talking about the charter school and all of that. But what do you think will take to it is a shame for a state like California, for a city like Los Angeles, to have such poor public education. Governor Brown left office with billions of dollars in a surplus. Why can't that money be put toward education?
Well, I think some of it can, but we have had deep recessions in this state. And really nobody wants to spend everything anymore, because when you do that and then you have a recession, and then we think that it's a cyclical thing in business, then you end up having to make terrible cuts that really cause great, great pain. And so I would say, it's the same thing I said to the district when they had a $2 billion surplus at the end of last year, that they should spend $1 billion on the things that teachers and parents want and save $1 billion. And I would say the same thing about the state. It should keep a prudent reserve, but it should spend more while it is raising taxes. We have 150 billionaires living in California. Mm-hmm. If we tax not their income, since they hide all of that, but their real wealth, we could add a lot of money. If we do the split roll that's going to be on the ballot in 2020, that adds more money. If we take a look at other sources of wealth that are largely untaxed in California, we can get to that $22,000 a year. And that will change not 100%, but about 80% of the issues that people care about. Because why do people think the schools are unsafe? Because we don't have people dealing with the emotional problems of children who live in trauma. We don't have anything that helps a kid, just even if it's not like a terrible trauma, just divorce is a trauma. We don't have really any help for children in those situations because of all of the cutbacks. Time to put the money in. Now you begin to change behavior, not by arresting kids and not by kicking them out of school, but by helping them deal with the real problems and traumas that come into many children's lives.
And in some cases also initiating after-school programs.
Oh, yes. Well,
where
you know,
they
we
can
did
stay in that safe environment.
I did with my partner. We've started LACER after-school programs, which are at 4 middle schools and 2 high schools. We serve 4,000 students a year. And when we do that, 2 of them are in the Little Armenia community. When we do that, what we do is we keep not only children safe, but we support their education. So that kids who've been in LACER since the 5th, 6th, or 7th grade have a 94% graduation rate. We need to be replicating this program all over the school district, because parents don't have any place for their children to go, and they don't want them to be latchkey kids.
Yeah.
That's dangerous to them, and it's dangerous to their community. So there's a lot to do. But mostly what we're going to do is when I win, we're going to take parents up to Sacramento. I did that when I was on the board the first time, and we were able to take the Ambassador Hotel from Donald Trump. Oh. The reason there's no Trump Hotel is because 450 parents came to Sacramento with me in a caravan, and we told them that that needed to be a school, that we were busing out literally 6,000 students a day to the West Valley, to the west side. They would be on a bus before they got up in the morning.
Yeah.
And they got home after dark at night, crazy. So we took that property away from him, and it's now the UCLA RFK Community School.
Oh, okay.
So it's wonderful. It has several elementary schools, a couple of middle schools, and a beautiful high school on that property, all serving children who would have been on buses otherwise far away. So I'm very proud of what we accomplished when I was in office before, and I'm trying to do it again, and it's why I'm happy to have the support of people like Supervisor Hilda Solis, people like United Teachers Los Angeles, the teachers union, and also I'm endorsed by the new state senator, Maria Elena Durazo. And I'm proud that school board members Schmerlson and McKenna have endorsed me. They are all endorsing me because they know that I have had a lot of experience. And at this point in history, I think that experience matters right now more than usual. Otherwise, people have to have a learning curve. It takes a couple of years to learn in the district, but I will come and hit the ground running. I know how to read that budget. I read it for 8 years. I know where money gets hidden. And that's something I can do to help right now, right this minute, and then organize the kinds of campaigns in Sacramento to get those 2/3 Democrats to really raise taxes on the wealth of the state so that we can take care of our children.
And also the voters who voted for the person you're going to replace should also take notice that, everything isn't as rosy as it seems when we're talking about education, because at the end of the day, we're talking about the future of this city and of this country.
Well, democracy doesn't work without a good educational system. And I think a lot of us learned in 2016 that democracy doesn't work unless you get involved in it. It's not on autopilot. If you're not involved, then things are going to happen and you're going to say, whoa, how did that happen? Well, it happened because I think too many of us thought it was on autopilot. Now, I was so overwhelmingly pleased, I can't think of a better word, by how many in the public stood out in the rain with their teachers. You know, I was at a school every morning and every afternoon, and I was never once the only non-teacher on the picket line. There were parents out there early in the morning and the afternoon. There were parents bringing teachers food. There were parents opening up their homes near schools so that the parents would have a place to go to the bathroom if they needed to. I mean, it was overwhelming, but that kind of support for public education is why I think we can reform the charter laws so that it works for everyone. And it's also why I believe we can raise the taxes on the wealth of this state and really say it's time we invested in all of the children in our society.
And I would love to have you back after March 1st so to really focus on some of the critical issues facing the city as far as education is concerned. Meanwhile, good luck to you.
Thank you.
On March 1st. We'll be watching the polls. And all of you out there, please go out and vote on March 1st. It is a 5th. Sorry. It is a special election. It's not gone all over the state or possibly in the city. So if you are in the 5th district of LAUSD, please go out and vote on March 5th and make sure to vote for Jackie Goldberg, who has been endorsed by the ANCA Western Region.
Thank you. And thank you, Ara, for having me.
Thank you for coming, and I look forward to future conversations.
Absolutely.
And thank you for joining us this evening. Have a good night.